Hello, I'm Kathleen Vaughan, artist, researcher, and professor of art education at Concordia University in Montreal, Canada. I develop studio and community-based projects that integrate arts and storytelling with an orientation to social and environmental issues. During the time that I held the Concordia University Research Chair in Socially Engaged Art and Public Pedagogies, that is from 2011 to 2021, a strand of my research and teaching considered the role that artists can play as changemakers in museums and galleries. The paper we'll present today, Listening Through the Lens of Peace, is aligned with this work.
Hello, everyone. I'm Emily Keenlyside. I worked as an educator in museums and galleries for 2 decades before returning to do my PhD in art education under Kathleen's supervision. I now teach museum studies at Mount Allison University. I conducted my research in Canada and Scotland, studying professional learning among gallery educators at the intersection of activist museum practices and critical adult education.
And now I will just share my screen so that you can see our images. There we go. So our co-author paper asks, how can audio guides support community engagement? Further, how can audio guides produced by graduate students and used by college students as curricular projects support learning? We take up these questions to consider the effectiveness of collaboratively produced audio guides as pedagogical tools to address key thematics of peace and social justice, raise awareness about the complexity of achieving and maintaining peace, and prompt critical reflection through guided encounters with artworks.
And as we describe both classroom curriculum and follow-up qualitative research, we'll reflect on the social role of art museums and explore the possible role of artists in speaking back or speaking with museum collections to add contemporary relevance and to encourage active engagement. These considerations are of particular relevance given the current moment of increased museum activism, political polarization, and ecological uncertainties.
This paper considers audio guides through the lens of community engagement, a term that can mean various things across multiple disciplines. One definition that aligns with my own thinking comes from the healthcare field, specifically from the American Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. It states that community engagement is the process of working collaboratively with and through groups of people affiliated by geographic proximity, special interest, or similar situations to address issues affecting the well-being of those people. It is a powerful vehicle for bringing about environmental and behavioral changes that will improve the health of the community and its members. It often involves partnerships and coalitions that help mobilize resources and influence systems, change relationships among partners, and serve as catalysts for changing policies, programs, and practices. In the case of our audio guides, the communities are multiple and intersecting. The students who created the audio guides as part of graduate level university courses I designed and taught, the education staff at the museum where the guides are cited, the hypothetical visitors to the museum who would use the guides, the CEGEP or junior college students who were the participants of our research project into the audio guides curricular use, and their 3 instructors. In terms of catalyzing change, I was interested in focusing attention on the social justice issue of peace, inquiring how it may or may not be evident in the art museum, and encouraging in all involved a deepened personal reflection about what peace means in one's own life as well. This paper offers a case study exploration of a sustained, multifaceted research and curricular engagement that over 8 years has brought together students and faculty from the Department of Art Education at Concordia University, a 45,000 student comprehensive university in downtown Montreal, Canada, and the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts, the oldest art museum in Canada, comprising 5 linked buildings located right beside the downtown campus of the university. The MMFA showcases Quebec, Canadian, and international art, both historical and contemporary, and holds 45,000 works. The special partnership with Concordia was undertaken to celebrate the major bequest to the MFFA by the Hornstein family and the construction of the Pavilion for Peace, which houses over 750 works from old masters to contemporary art commissioned for the pavilion on the theme of peace. The Hornstein Pavilion is also the site of the Michel de la Chenalière Center for Learning and the Arts, the largest educational complex in a North American art museum, which annually welcomes over 300,000 participants to its activities. My own research and curricular engagement enabled 2 cohorts of graduate students in specially designed courses to build bonds between the university and the museum and to explore the museum as a source of curricular innovation and enrichment. From 2015 through 2018, Concordia students and I created 2 hour-long audio guides to artworks in the Pavilion for Peace. As mentioned, we created these to offer visitors to the museum an opportunity to deeply consider selected works on site through the lens of peace, inviting the listener to consider what peace means to them and how and whether the museum can be a place to engage with peace. Each audio guide was versioned in both English and French, and all 4 are available on the website for projects linked to my research chair. We invite you to listen when you have the time.
So once the audio guides were complete, in 2019, a research team comprising Kathleen, myself, then a PhD student, and Jeannie Kim, then an MA student, explored the pedagogical opportunities they offered via study in collaboration with students and instructors from Dawson College, a nearby junior college known for its strong fine arts curriculum. We offered guided visits for 3 classes, followed by a class discussion and a short student survey returned by mail. At the end of January 2020, the research team conducted a focus group conversation with 2 instructors.
And then there's the rest of 2020. During the pandemic, like everyone, we watched as museums and all cultural institutions closed and technologically mediated visits such as audio and video guides rose in prominence. Both within and outside cultural institutions, we heard loud and urgent claims for greater inclusion of diverse audiences, artworks, and perspectives, and museums responded. Our own research was sidelined and forever changed by these times and their aftermath, which we are now living. It is in this context that we are now revisiting our audio guide research and making it public. In order to make sense of our findings, we'll briefly describe how the audio guides came to be. They started as a stream of my research and because a stream of my research and teaching is linked to the museum, not so much as a museum educator, but as an artist seeking to engage with and even intervene in museum collections. For instance, in the winter of 2015, I had a special project underway with the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts, an experimental intensive course that would be focused at the museum for the February reading break. Via this course, students would create a public outreach activity for visitors to the museum during the Nuit Blanche Arts Festival that happened at the end of that week. Working in small groups and inspired by 5 different paintings, graduate students created presentations for visitors, unpacking the artwork's meanings and raising questions about peace. After the in-gallery presentations, visitors contributed to a collaborative artwork, a kite for peace, that later that night was installed in the museum, becoming the first work from Concordia students to be so. Finally, students interviewed visitors who had participated in these activities, audio recording their answers to a series of questions about their experience of peace in the museum. While this was to have been a standalone activity, the education team at the MMFA encouraged us to build this into an audio guide that could be available to visitors when the upcoming Pavilion for Peace opened. 3 students, Emma Harake, Jacob Legale, and Melissa Tamparella, were keen to do so and worked with me through the summer and fall of 2015 to develop the first audio guide called 4 Artworks in Search of Peace, or 4 œuvres en quête de paix. The narration featured these students and others' voices in discussion of 3 paintings and 1 sculpture from the Dutch Golden Age and Romantic eras: Jean-Baptiste Carpeau's La Bacchante aux Roses, Thomas Fayette's Sunday in the Backwoods of Canada, Lucas van Valkenborg's A Meat and Fish Market Winter, and as you just saw on the previous slide, Franz Snyder's Still Life. These approaches emphasize storytelling and invention, but also deep research. For instance, in exploring La Bacchante aux Roses, Emma Harake discovered the name and some of the story of the young woman who had modeled for this piece, which is an artist's study for the full life-sized frieze that stirred up considerable controversy at the time of its installation at the Paris Opera, when it was judged to be obscene. Emma's narration took up these deep and currently relevant questions of women's rights in society, as well as censorship, with a poetic and whimsical touch. The graduate students were all artists themselves, with a feel for the creative process and a willingness to explore beyond typical art history conventions. As inspiration for their approach, they were directed to the remarkable award-winning podcast, The Memory Palace by Nick DeMeo, who himself went on to be artist in residence at the Metropolitan Museum in 2016-17 and has won many awards for his work. Also in the winter of 2015, I'd responded to a call from the foundation of the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts to propose a project to celebrate the launch of the new Pavilion for Peace, only barely under construction at the time. After consulting with my students, I proposed a special graduate course to be held in the winter of 2017, a peace walk or polyvocal audio guide to the artworks. This proposal was selected by the Museum for Development and Funding, which meant that we had money for translation, professional audio engineering and recording, and honoraria for all non-student participants. This audio guide, called 6 Tales of Peace and War, or 6 Histoires de Paix et Guerre, was conceived and written through the winter 2017 term, and then recorded and edited in the summer and early fall. All the audio guides were launched together in November 2017.
So I was fortunate to be a student in Kathleen's second course, a first classroom experience of my doctoral studies. As an experienced gallery educator and trainer myself, I was well equipped with strategies for engaging visitors through dialogue and inquiry, but had little to no experience working in the production of digital tools. So I saw this as a great opportunity to work collaboratively with other students, some of them artists, through script writing, and also gain new skills in the recording phase of the project. We worked in small teams, choosing artworks that spoke to the theme and developing the narrative together. What could be said about these works? Whose voices would we include? How would we employ questioning strategies, usually employed in multivocal dialogue, to encourage critical self-reflection and active looking? Moving between small and large group settings allowed for active experiential learning that really challenged us to work in an iterative way that responded to ongoing feedback from Kathleen as well as our peers. As students, we benefited from access to the university's state-of-the-art recording facilities, and thanks to partnership support from the museum, we were in contact with some museum employees who work on audio guides in their role at the Museum of Fine Arts, but also we had the opportunity to work directly with a sound engineer who supervised our recording session. Students brought in family, friends, and other community members to lend their voices to this project, even some music, which was really quite lovely, and all of this to the text that we had developed together.
Once the audio guides were completed, I planned research that would help evaluate them, an aspect of my research chair being to both develop and assess the impact of socially engaged art. So many of us working in this domain want and need to better understand the extent to which our work is having an impact. With her own expertise in museum education, Emily was an important collaborator throughout the research process. As we discuss our research project, we'll show you photographs taken along the route of 6 Tales of Peace and War, the project of which Emily was co-creator. We begin with Yannick Pouliot's imposing self-portrait, a commission for the Pavilion for Peace. I should mention that we do not have photographs of the research process or its participants, since we did not seek ethics clearance for these. There was no need to do so as we assessed our participants' responses to the audio guides.
And so, as Kathleen briefly mentioned, we invited 3 college-level art history instructors to bring their classes to the museum and experience the audio guides firsthand in the gallery space. Each student downloaded the audio guide to their phone and listened individually via earbuds or headphones as they followed the narrator's directions through the museum space. These students were all 18 years or older. A few had visited the museum prior to the visit, but some had not. And thanks to their preparation in this and other courses, in general, these students had highly developed concepts of social justice and decolonization and were primed to consider art through the lens of contemporary social concerns. One class listened to the first audio guide, which included works on the pavilion's 1st and 3rd floors. The other 2 listened to the second audio guide, which was oriented to art on the 2nd. We collected feedback from student participants through a questionnaire and follow-up discussion that we conducted in 2 of the 3 classes. Pre-visit questions addressed participants' previous experience with art museums and audio guides, as well as 2 broad thematic questions, one about the very concept of peace and what the word meant to them, and a second that asked for their thoughts on the role of art museums. Post-visit questions asked participants to describe their visit and the ways in which the audio guide informed both their interpretation of the artworks and their thoughts about peace. We also asked student participants to name personal highlights of the visit and to consider what they would include in an audio guide if they were to develop one. Open-ended focus group questions for professors explored similar questions and paid specific attention to their observations on their students' learning and their thoughts on the effectiveness of audio guides as a museum-based pedagogical tool for art history classrooms. During the visits, myself and Jeannie, the other research assistant, took note of participants' movements during and after the audio guide visits. And we both remarked on the various ways in which students simultaneously listened and engaged in other activities: photography, drawing, exchanging with others, texting, and even off-pacing and trajectories. Students were multitaskers, wanting to engage in the audio guide experience at their own pace and rhythm, all while enjoying the pleasures of an outing with their classmates. Students' conceptions of peace suggested a kind of interplay between notions of peace and peaceful. Their responses referred either to a sense of justice, equality, safety, freedom, fairness, respect, or a state of being, happiness, calm, silence, tranquility, serenity. More specifically, regarding the role of art museums in thinking about peace, we grouped students' responses according to 4 broad areas. Exposure, so here we're talking in their words about different perspectives, historical facts, decolonization. Secondly, dialogue, so a space for conversation, critical thinking, and reflection. What could be understood as the power of art? So words like emotion and inspiration, speaking out, the artist's message. And then lastly, ambiance, so a sense of calm, relaxation, and attention to the atmosphere. So perhaps in light of these firm, in-depth responses students offered to this question, they had less to say about the extent to which the audio guides shaped their thinking about peace and the social role of the museum. In fact, a third of responses indicated that, in fact, the audio guides didn't contribute to their thoughts in this direction. Most did, however, describe their museum visit in very positive terms. In discussing the highlights, students named 4 key elements. The first was a soundscape aspect, notably the audio features and effects that were inserted to add life and content to the story being told. For example, about the lion attacking Milos of Croton or the farm that Marie Antoinette set up at Rambouillet Castle, which was the historical underpinning of the sculpture by Pierre Julien. The other 3 elements they appreciated were engagement strategies that the creators had deliberately invoked, The students enjoyed the storytelling, for instance, in the Napoleon Gallery, some of which can be seen here.
This segment, the story is scripted from the point of view of Napoleon's iconic hat, which you can see to the left of the vitrine in the image above. The segment speaks about the hat, speaks about its own manufacture and safeguarding through the centuries, the other artifacts in the vitrine and the paintings in the gallery, other headgear Napoleon wears in other paintings, and the collector who assembled and donated this trove of Napoleana. That the museum's collection includes one of the few remaining original hats crafted for Napoleon was seen by the graduate student storytellers as an excellent hook for scripting their portion of the narrative. The junior college students also appreciated the juxtaposing of multiple artworks at various points of the audio guide, as was deliberately done in the segment on Goya's portrait.
And finally, they named the opportunity for guided meditative reflection as a really appealing attribute. And this meditative approach was deliberately used in both the opening, which focuses on the flow of light through the space, and the ending, where the students were invited to attend to the material specifics and metaphors of Jean-Michel Otinel's Peony Knot, installed to great advantage in a light-filled atrium that provides seating and respite for visitors, as well as a spectacular view over the city to the south. The challenges our professor participants identified included the need for clearer instruction, orientation, and wayfinding, and the need for space for responding through reflection or conversation to the questions posed by the audio guide narrators about, for instance, how the listener feels while moving through the museum space.
The students' statements of what they would do in creating their own audio guides aimed to address some of these challenges. They included, among others, incorporating a larger number of artworks, ensuring moments in time and places in the gallery for rest and respite, and offering more explicit links to pieces. Professors' reflections on the audio guide visits revealed other points of convergence with their students, and we grouped comments on the value of the audio guide experience into four main categories: design, storytelling, modeling interpretation, and off-site use.
For them, key strengths in the design of the audio guides included the textures, the impact of the soundscape, the inclusion of multiple perspectives, and the use of contemporary art as an entry point into historical works. According to the professor's observations and in-class follow-up, students opened up to the content when they felt connected. As such, the audio guide storytelling again was described as accessible and relatable for young adults, particularly those studying in non-art disciplines. And the professors also appreciated the variety of accents among the narrators. Similarly, students also responded well to the non-omniscient, non-authoritative voices. The audio guides deliberately offered an alternative to a typical curatorial or didactic text. The professors also appreciated the audio guide experience as a tool for modeling interpretation for their students, most of whom were new to art history and who had little to no experience expressing their interpretations and opinions about art. As one respondent said, talking about art is a creative process, and the audio guides offered myriad avenues and styles of discussing works of art. Professors valued narrative as a mode of observation, and extended looking time allowed students to go deeper into the materiality of the artworks.
Lastly, professors discussed the potential of the audio guides for off-site use, pre or post-visit. For example, as a starting point to teach storytelling techniques, as an introduction to a museum collection, and integrating audio guides into their own curriculum as an alternative to traditional research papers. And so what are our key takeaways from this extended curricular and research experience?
So briefly, when we talk about effectiveness, as a formal curricular project, I can say, even as a participant and speaking with the community members who we brought in to work with us, their excitement and enthusiasm for being included in this project, but also the thoughtfulness and the even healing impact of talking through some of these questions around peace was a really important part of the experience for myself and my team members. In addition to that, positive graduate students' evaluations, the college professors' interest in incorporating audio guides into their curriculum, and even one college students having done the visit with us, who created an audio guide for an end-of-term project. All of these things point to the classroom potential of audio guides as a formal curricular project. And then in terms of its effectiveness as a museum pedagogical tool, I would definitely stress that working with this group of students that included those who have little to no experience in museums and interpreting art offered an important glimpse into possible relevance for similarly uninitiated general public visitors. And since the time we began our research, art museums are increasingly employing curatorial and other platforms to address access, social inequalities, the climate crisis, and legacies of colonialism with visitors via their collections. Audio guides made accessible to visitors both on and off site offer such an opportunity.
And in terms of partnerships, I should say that thanks to the partnership with the museum, the graduate students and I were able to enjoy a singular creative learning experience through a bespoke course supported by the financial resources that allowed us to realize an artwork of professional technical quality, something beyond our own skill set or the university's means. But like any collaboration, ours was not always straightforward. For instance, while our class was scheduled from 4 to 6 p.m. to accommodate the grad students who were classroom teachers until about 3, the museum could not give us access to galleries past their 5 p.m. closing time, which made it complicated for us to engage with the works of art on site. More profoundly, we held different perspectives on the nature of the work we were producing. To the students and me, the audio guides were top quality artistic works that contributed to the visitor experience and merited an ongoing integration into the museum's offerings. To the museums, the audio guides seemed to be seen more as pedagogical outcomes that had little to do with the museum's curatorial or even education projects. Once the courses were over and the Pavilion for Peace launched, the museum chose not to promote the audio guides directly to their visitors, leaving access to my research chair website, where you find them now. I'm disappointed by this, but I can see the museum's perspective, particularly since these audio guides were aesthetically distinctive from the ones they produced in-house themselves, according to strict union stipulations. If another occasion for such work with the museum arises, I will do better to clarify from the outside our respective expectations. And then in terms of new possibilities, I'd say that even with these challenges, the possibilities are real. It's an exceptional opportunity for graduate students to create their own personal artworks in conversation with museum quality art in ways that allow them to bring their own creations to museum visitors via collaborative engagements or public display. As important is the opportunity to think critically about the museum's collection, which is, of course, not as diverse or inclusive as many of us would wish it to be. A point of our class discussion was that there is no work in the Rococo or Enlightenment collection that was created by a woman, and that even these floors' 2 commissions on the theme of peace were created by white males, a demographic vastly overrepresented in the museum collection. Some of our students wanted us to push our critical engagement further, which then brings up worthwhile considerations about the flavor and role of the interventions we are creating. Are these affable interventions, the term coined by museum theorist Claire Robbins to describe work of artists in museums that is less oriented to abrasive critique and more to the values of co-production? That had been my own direction and instruction to the students. Another time, I might shift our work towards clearer critique and fight that corner directly with the museum if necessary. Thus, the pedagogic and creative potential of the graduate student artist intervention is significant and exciting and is worth pursuing as we look for new possibilities.
And so I completed both this project and my own doctoral work in the wake of COVID-19, widespread protests for racial justice, and here in Canada, a growing movement calling on museums to commit to reconciliation and wider decolonization efforts. This context has underscored the need for ongoing and committed professional and other learning opportunities that build relationship and competencies among current and future museum workers alike. One important finding from my research was the need for museums to find new ways to document and mobilize critical visitor feedback with the potential to inform curatorial, pedagogical, even policy planning. And so, to underscore Kathleen's previous comments, it's my assertion that the kind of creative, critical responses that come out of artistically driven projects such as hers are one such an opportunity. While we have much to learn through and about museum collections, museum staff likewise have much to learn from the outcomes and processes of student and faculty engagement with the artworks in their care. Museum staff could also celebrate, promote, and make accessible to visitors student-made interpretive materials such as audio guides in the same spirit that they exhibit student artworks in the gallery devoted to school and community partnerships.
I hope I will have more opportunities to work with students in collaboration with the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts or other cultural institutions here in Montreal. In fact, I am just about to begin discussions with a curator about developing a special course linked to an upcoming temporary exhibit about a notable Canadian woman artist. Museologically, it wouldn't make sense for us to develop an audio guide for a show that would be moving on, perhaps even before we finished our activity. But we will do something, and I will strive to ensure that our gifted, committed graduate students are taken seriously as artists. We will continue to learn together, to engage our multiple communities in the spirit of the CDC definition we voiced at the top of this talk, in order to, quote, serve as catalysts for changing policies, programs, and practices, unquote, and to continue to learn together.
There were many contributions to this project, and their names, as well as the two audio guides themselves, can be found at the website you see at the bottom of this screen.
Thank you from both of us for your attention. We hope this discussion has given you ideas for research, museum-based community engagement, and put some wind beneath your wings. We'll leave you with this image of our peace kite in flight, thanks to the energy and enthusiasm of some of their graduate student creators. Thank you very much.